He has a PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi, and takes an active interest in gender studies, discourse of violence, representations of disease and death in literature, and human-animal studies. In her research, she explores processes of othering across a broad spectrum.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this. It's a great honor to be here today as a part of HLF, and in particular to be talking to Marta Breen today. It's a great opportunity to discover her work, and I look forward to acquiring and reading very many of her books. Marta Breen is an acclaimed Norwegian non-fiction writer and journalist who writes about politics, music, and women's history. Her books have won several awards. Her latest book, Smash the Patriarchy, explores the history of patriarchy and women's movements against it, all the way from Greek antiquity to the present. She's passionate about changing the way in which we think about women, about gender roles, feminism, and culture. Her books like How to Be a Scandinavian Feminist, Women in Battle, and Smash the Patriarchy ask questions that make us all think. Questions like, why do we talk about career women but not career men? Why is being a daddy's girl better than being a mama's boy? Why can men be angry but not women? Why do we perceive men and women differently? And what does this mean for the world that we live in? So Marta, I thought we could start talking today, this conversation today, by thinking about why in the long history of the world, and I speak globally, most of the prominent thinkers, philosophers, writers, artists, the ones that are seen as masters, the ones that we still talk about, are men. And it seems to me paradoxical that in the long history of human thought, mostly the people who have said something about who women are and how they should behave are not women, but men. How do you explain this?
Well, it's, the question can be answered in two ways, because first of all, we know that women have been denied the stage, the ability to speak, the possibility to have an education, and they've been kept off away from politics and knowledge for centuries. So of course, when you deny someone knowledge and education, then and also in very many parts of the world, women are still not able to participate in politics. So, so that's, of course, one answer why men have been more prominent and visible. But also, there has been very many great female thinkers and artists that have been overlooked, that have been forgotten about, that have been ridiculed, and also put in jail, actually, for talking about the topics that we now talk about. So that is also one of the big reasons why we don't know about them.
Yeah, and I found it really interesting how you show in your book, Smash the Patriarchy, how several women have been invisibilized, forced to become invisible. You give us the example of Emily Dickinson, for example, who had to publish anonymously in order to be able to be published at all. Or writers like the Bronte sisters who had to publish under men's names in order to be able to have their books read by the public at all. And this injustice, of course, makes one's blood boil, but at the same time, it makes one wonder as well, how far have we come from that point?
Yeah, well, it's, of course, huge differences regarding where we are in the world. And still, in many cultures, women are not encouraged to have careers or follow their own dreams. But we have also come a long way since the 1800s. Also in Norway, in that period of time, there was very many female thinkers and writers and artists that operated anonymously. Because not that they were not allowed to write a book, but if they wrote about certain topics, they would not be, they would be very unpopular in society, and they would not get a husband. So, and we have come a long way, and very much happened in the 1970s. With the second wave of feminism. It was all over the world, of course, but people here won't remember because we are too young, but in 1975 there was this Women's Year organized by the UN, and then there were so many things that happened with the laws and to get women into education especially, and also get them financially independent, because that is very, very important if you want to do your thing and make complete, fully decisions over your own life. You can't be financially dependent on your husband. So when women started to earn their own money, they could also be artists in a different way, because then they could they don't have to apply the men in. So in Norway today, I believe we have more female authors than male, actually, and very many of them are writing about topics that, some of the same topics that I am writing about, in different ways, of course. Many are fictional authors. And about women's lives and sexuality and freedom. It's very, very common topics in Scandinavian literature.
Yes, some amount of change starts happening everywhere in the world, which is very heartening to see. Because I think certain amounts of prejudices still exist, because I think if one is writing about politics, then one is immediately assumed to be a man, or the other way around. And women authors, one finds more acceptable if they're writing about, women's topics or romances or something or the other of the sort. Thankfully, that starts being edged out. And we've also seen in India a few years ago, there was quite a furore, because there was a woman who was working as a sports commentator, and this had been a field which was always occupied by men. So there was really a lot of trivializing of what she was doing in her capacity, but over the years there has been a greater amount of acceptance. I also found it interesting how you discuss what marriage has historically meant for women, and about how it has prevented many women from pursuing their dreams, how it makes them lose their name. They have to take a vow to be subservient to their husbands, or at least till a certain amount of time, that was the norm, and tend to children and household work. And yet we find that folk tales and fairy tales present the idea of marriage as a way out of difficulties, and a sort of romantic, attractive, even glamorous option. And if I think of the Grimm's fairy tales, for example, like Cinderella or Snow White or Rapunzel, they all present a damsel in distress who needs to be rescued, and she's of course rescued by a knight in shining armor, a prince or whoever, who marries her, and by marrying her saves her from some sort of a life of misery or perhaps danger. Why do you think these stories have such a strong hold on popular imagination, including on women?
Yeah, well, it's kind of tradition. People tend to read the same books for their kids as they were read themselves, because it's kind of nostalgic. But there's a parallel trend, because if we talk about these princesses and the Disney movies, there are also coming more stronger heroines. And when we talk about books for children, there has been, for the last 10 years, a big wave with books about female pioneers, from Frida Kahlo to more political, to Malala, children's books about these stories, and that is what I have been taking part of. With this book, Women in Battle, I brought one copy with me. It's the English version, and it tells the story about how women have opposed to discrimination from the 1800s. But if we look at it, it didn't. The organized feminism, it started in the mid 1800s, but there has been feminists since the ancient time. They've been standing alone, and very many have been killed, as I said. But then when women started to organize, they looked at each other and said, we can't have it this way, we have to do something about it. Then that's what made things happen. And those stories about these female pioneers, that's what attracts me. And women have always had to fight for every right and fight their way into what was earlier just a man's world. And some of them had no role models because nobody had done these things before, and they were not encouraged at all, and many had unhappy lives because they were all alone in this, but they did it anyway for us, I believe, so that we can sit here. And so I respect these stories tremendously, these women, and I want to make them more well known. So that's what I focus about. And when you see in school books, their stories are not included. We hear in Norway very much about the couple of men who went skiing to the North Pole. They are big heroes. But the women who fought for our right to vote, they are much more unknown. So that's what I want to do something about. And also I would like for big commercial companies to make these into cartoons and to movies so that it will be not just for the people who go to the library, but for everyone.
That brings me to my next question, because I had been wondering why you chose the form of the graphic novel for two of your texts, at least as far as I can see, for Smash the Patriarchy and for Women in Battle, whereas some of your other texts are not graphic novels. So do you think this is a better vehicle to convey the ideas and messages that you're trying to get through?
Yes, absolutely. I'm not a drawer. I collaborate with an illustrator called Jenny Jordal. She's great and she's very funny, and we have so much in common. So when we met, it was like a match made in heaven, because I had always wanted to make comics or graphic novels, as we call it. But I just cannot draw at all, so I had just put that away. But then we met and we worked together very well. And I believe that with comics, it's much easier to tell a story for a broad audience. And since it's been translated into so many countries, I believe that it shows that this is a way of reaching out to many people. And also, of course, by using humor, it's much easier because humor is very cultural thing. It's very difficult for me to tell jokes that I know it will be successful in Norway, but maybe not here. But when you make it into graphic novels, it's so much easier to see what is funny and not. And I believe that because feminism, it contains so many serious topics and so many sad stories, and we have to let in some light and use humor because otherwise people wouldn't
Yeah,
read it.
Because we've been talking about feminism and that's what you write about, I was also wondering what you thought about the way many people are still kind of suspicious of the word feminism or feminist and rather reluctant to use it to describe themselves. How would you define being a feminist?
Well, for me, feminism is simply a word for the fight against sexism, the fight against gender discrimination. It has, I compare it to anti-racism, which is of course the fight against other kind of discrimination against ethnicity or skin color, because it's resistance movement. Racism and sexism and fascism and they have something in common, and it means that there is a big part of society that regards themselves as the norm. We are the norm and you are something else, and we are very different, and there has to be some rules for you and some rules for us because we are so different, and that is what we are fighting against. So I believe that everyone who believes that gender should not limit a person's freedom or opportunities in life is a feminist. That's the definition.
Yeah, but unfortunately, so many people seem to think of it as somehow a bad word and seem to associate it with hating men, which of course misses the point altogether. But yeah, it's interesting that this is a point that you bring up also in your other writing, and I found it really wonderful how in How to Be a Scandinavian Feminist, which is like a kind of manifesto on how to be a feminist in Scandinavia, you propose a measure which you call Free the Man. And I thought that was really interesting because one always assumes feminism is about emancipating women, freeing women, but you're talking here about free the man. Maybe you could elaborate for us what you mean by that?
Yes, because as I said, it's a fight against gender discrimination, and sometimes gender can limit a man's freedom as well, because we have these gender norms that are very strong. Also in Norway, young boys are brought up to believe that they have to be strong at all times, that they should not cry, they should not show emotions, and this restricts men in very many ways. It also, of course, women also suffer from this, from men believing that they have to be strong and not lose face in any situation. So I believe that gender roles should be we have to soften them up for men and for women. And then when that happens, we all become happier. And there is much research about this, of course, all over the world, that a country with a high level of equality and not very strict gender roles, and also high financial equality, they score consistently better on everything, on welfare, on health, on happiness. So it's also good for the whole society. When women are free to pursue their own dreams and careers and earn money, of course that will help the whole society because we got more tax money. And so that is kind of the huge message behind that book. It's that countries that don't cling on to the traditional gender roles, they are more successful in every way.
Yeah, I'm glad you just mentioned this idea about gender roles and stereotypes that have come up and which continue to be perpetuated over the centuries. Because in your book, you also give us the example of the 17th century Queen of Sweden, Queen Christina, who was considered not feminine enough in her appearance, in her behavior, in her interests. And so she was even suspected of being a hermaphrodite and in fact exhumed and checked years after her death to figure out if she was a woman or not. And I thought that was quite a radical sort of way of going about it.
Yeah.
And these attitudes, of course, not to such an extent, but to a pretty large extent, continue to exist. What you mentioned about how men don't cry and women don't get angry and all of those sort of things. I was wondering also because, like we said, this is not about women versus men. This is not about fighting the other gender. It's more like fighting against patriarchy. And in that fight, of course, men and women should be allies of each other and not see each other as opponents. But patriarchy, if we look at it another way, isn't simply about men oppressing women or the system which supports or favors men being not supportive of women. Very often in patriarchal societies, women are judged, women are slut-shamed, women are pressurized, marginalized, and oppressed by other women as well. There is, of course, the very popular and enduring kind of trope of the evil stepmother, for example, or the bad mother-in-law, who very conveniently then bears the blame for making a woman's life difficult. Not only in the fairy tales that we were talking about a little earlier, but in society as well. But aren't these supposedly guilty and even women themselves also victims of patriarchy and instrumentalized by patriarchy? You know, they internalize these norms so much that they then end up exploiting or ill-treating other women.
Yeah.
No?
Yes, and it's what you mentioned is very important, internalization, because very often people believe that when I talk about these subjects, many men they react with, but you do it yourself. Women, you are your own worst enemy, and women, you are part of it. And I say yes. That is the patriarchy. It's how we are all, that it's society. Society has set these rules, and then we adapt, and we are socialized into it, and we are internalizing. When women grow up in a country or a society that doesn't believe in women, then we don't believe in ourselves, and then we don't believe in other women, and it's a circle. So. So, as you say, the enemy is not men, it's this system that value men higher than women. And it's, in Norway, we believe that we are very, that equality has come a very far away, and we are very proud of it. But of course, we have also many issues. And when I talk to women, I tell them to be aware of this, because everyone thinks that I don't have any prejudices. I'm not like that, and then maybe sometimes as a woman you react a certain way towards other women. Maybe you react negatively because she is not living up to the female norm. It can be in the way she looks, but it can be maybe she's not smiling, and then you think she's a bitch because you know, a resting bitch face. It's an expression for women who doesn't act servile and smiling all the time. Women are brought up into this idea that they should be pleasing and nice and make every situation go smoothly. And then when a woman doesn't act like that, also women will react negatively. And so then I ask women to go into themselves when if they react negatively towards a woman at work, for example. Go think, is it because I have different expectations towards her? sometimes it may have to do with gender. Of course, we can't like everybody, not all women are nice, but sometimes it has to do with your gender expectations, and then you have to work with yourself and your own prejudice.
Yeah, you were just talking about how things are in Norway, and that kind of made me think just how pervasive can patriarchy be, because when we speak of patriarchy, often we are thinking about, is there equal pay for equal work in a society or not? Are women and men allowed to do certain things, or is everything free for everybody? Is there gender equality? Is there equal representation in politics and economy? But is that really enough if we have laws that support equality? What about the more insidious, the more invisible forms of patriarchy? So I'm thinking about, the ways in which women's agency is controlled often in the name of caring for them, concern for them, old-fashioned chivalry or security, keeping them safe, or kind of perpetuating stereotypes by paying compliments on women's appearance, which a lot of people seem to think is absolutely necessary. So men would be complimented on their achievements, but women, you will talk about their appearance. Isn't all that patriarchy as well? And how does one get that message across?
Yeah, that's what I've spent the last 20 years trying to do. So I've written now 15 books, and some of them are going towards the big lines in history, and some of them are focusing on these kind of smaller topics, but also important topics. And in Norway, because we have achieved so much when it comes to laws and equality, then we have been focusing a lot on these mechanisms that you talk about. And some people believe that they are very small questions, and they maybe believe that, oh, why are we going to talk about like these petty things? But we have to do that anyway. Sometimes you get unpopular as a feminist for raising your hand against these questions, but we have to do that because we have also achieved a lot in these areas just since the 70s, because we have been working, we have had all these public debates about how society talks about men and women, and also pictures about in commercials, in yeah, all the expectation that women have to be, you have to put an enormous amount of work in your appearance all the time, and maybe in that area it's become worse since the 70s, because there's so much money to earn from this industry. So I believe that it's important that we talk about all these things, both the very serious questions about violence and femicide and rape, and also these smaller topics that has got to do with how we treat men and women in daily life. When the word patriarchy, many people believe that it's kind of radical and maybe too much to talk about a patriarchy. I believe that it's a very good expression, because in Norway, I believe that the patriarchy, it's all over the world, but we talk about how much power it has. So in Norway, for a few decades ago, the patriarchy stood strong, because women earned less than men, and they were not participating in politics in the same degree. But now we have, it doesn't stand as strong. But it's still, men still earn more money than women. Men still have more power. but not as much. And then if you travel to other parts of the world, it's the degree. We are talking not if there is a patriarchy, but the degree of patriarchy. And that's why I wrote that Scandinavian book. Not because every country should be like Scandinavia, because that's not, we don't want that, but because I believe we have had the authorities on our side, women, on our side in a great number of years in very many important issues, and that is why women in Scandinavia live freer lives than many others. And so I feel that we have a responsibility to share our experience and what we've learned, and especially right now when many things are going in the wrong direction in parts of the world. We see that patriarchal leaders have seized power in a great number of countries, and that many are losing their hard-won rights. It's not like that people, it's easy to believe that the rights that we have won, they are carved in stone and we can never lose them, but it's not the case. People are losing rights. That is why maybe it's more important than ever that feminists across the world stand together.
I would like to ask you one last question before I open the house for questions. We were just talking about, before we came here, about the role that religion plays, and about how religion has such a strong hold on people that if religious organizations or leaders perpetuate images that are patriarchal. And I was thinking at that point of time about how the biblical story of Adam and Eve, for example, positions woman as morally weak and kind of inferior, and the one who leads man astray and misleads him onto the wrong path, etc., leads to his downfall. And there are stories like this in practically all religions. Do you think one, well, as the feminist movement, as women's movements, does one need to reach out to recruit religion and religious leaders again as powerful allies, because they have such a hold on people? Maybe they are the ones that one needs to convince first, and then the message goes further to the rest of society.
Yeah.
Because I think these attitudes are just so deeply ingrained also because they are sanctioned by religions, by all religions. I wonder how you think about that.
Yeah, it's a very big question and topic, and of course, some part of why we have come as far as we have come in the equality matters in Scandinavia is that we are a secular community, and I believe that it's important to have secular laws if you are going to be fully have the equality implemented, because as you say, most religions, all religions, they separate between men and women in many ways, and when it comes to bodies and sexuality, we see that the woman's body is regarded as very sexual, so we have to dress it a certain way. Or also in other parts of the world, like in some Western communities, we have to undress the woman because she's sexual. So it's, but the male body is neutral. He can walk around as he wants. So this is a big issue, and also everything that has to do with shame and honor. It's a very religious idea that you have to defend the woman's honor, and so these are things that complicate the work for equality, and then it's very important to reach out to religious communities and leaders. And the Norwegian church, it was also very it was discriminating against women. It's not as much anymore, because voices from the inside of the church communities has worked with these issues for decades, and now we do have a liberal church. And we see that the same thing is happening in many religions, and also in Islam we have now some female imams, and that is great. They do much work with interpreting the Quran in different ways, as we have done with the Bible. You can read things very differently, because these books, they are thousands of years old, and they were written down in a time where men had all power. There was men who made these books, so we have to look at them, these texts, with a modern eye. As everything else, we do that with everything in society. We also have to do that with religion. So, but there are, fortunately, it's happening, and there are many modern liberal voices in religious communities as well, and those are the voices we have to support, not the strict fundamentalist ones. So, yeah, this is one of the big fights in the years to come.
Thank you. So we can take questions now, and I see some raised hands already. Amita, maybe? And then the gentleman at the back.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marta Breen, for not only representing Norway as a guest nation, as the country in focus at Hyderabad Literary Festival, but I think you have been very clear in your presentation of what you are striving for, and the voice, and I'm afraid I've not read the books, but I will go back and read as many as I can of your 15 books. That's quite an oeuvre. Thank you so much. And Anu, for leading the question and conversation. I will keep myself short. The question is there a way in which voices can carry themselves further and across waters? Of course, such platforms are important, where people talk about freeing people, freeing men, and freeing, because that's a very fundamental and crucial and pivotal coinage that you have given, because we are all struggling with emancipation of race, color, class, men, women, gender, bisexuals, the LGBTQIA plus struggle. I mean, we're all united. And in the work and through your work, of course, you're doing that. But is there an umbrella organization in the Scandinavia, in Europe, and across that can do it even stronger and faster, perhaps? Because the time is running out. World has been taken over by people who think very differently, and we are moving backwards.
So the question was how to, or how this can be organized, or yeah, it's well, very many things are happening already. Like I love literature festivals in this matter, because this is a great way of dealing with it. But the best thing, of course, is that if the local organizations travel, and they have always done that since the 1800s. Feminists have visited each other and worked together, and we saw that when women got the right to vote, that was because of international collaboration. But as I mentioned earlier, this UN year for women in 1975. Next year it's 50 years since that event, and it was followed by a big conference in Mexico, and then 20 years later we had a big UN conference about women in Beijing, and it was very many laws and acts were signed off in Beijing. They did not dare to follow up, because they believe that if we do have a similar conference today, many of those ambitious things will maybe fall, because right now there is a right-winged conservative wave, and we saw that last year a couple of countries, they withdraw from the Istanbul Convention, which is a very important convention for the work against violence towards women. It is a difficult time, but I do believe that UN should definitely launch another Women's Year, but maybe it should not be a Women's Year this time, but a gender year, because that it will show that we have come further from 75, and now we should talk about both genders and how we can support each other and how we can make strict gender roles less important. So unfortunately I have no saying in the UN, but if we all talk about it, so maybe in 2030.
Good morning, madam. It is not paradoxical that in third world countries, where democracy or national independence came during the feudal regime was still there, and then the Western countries where the democracy came when they had already got industrialized. So the feminist movements in these third world countries are still under control of the elite class feminists. Instead of, they are empowering the subaltern women for raising their own voice. The elite class feminists are still holding the role of some kind of Mashiach. So why not they are giving the role? So you can see in many where you can talk about the maternity leave of the working women, but not about the domestic help. Nobody talks about them. Why? Why not they are giving empowered by the feminists who are still elite kind of female? What do you think about it?
That's a good question. Class is a very important issue in the feminist movement, and there has always been like discussions about which group of women are we supporting, and also I believe that well, I can just talk for my own country, but class issues is a big issue in Norwegian feminism as well, and it has also been in international feminism. Around 1900, the socialist women, they started organizing for the very first time, and that was much needed because, as you say, the more the first feminists, they were definitely from the higher society and economics. So they had absolutely different values. And but since Clara Zetkin in 1910, there has been also many feminists working with the working class women's movement, and I grew up in that myself with my parents. They're actually communists, so we usually focus on working class women in that. But I don't know the situation in Indian feminism about that, but it's a very important issue. Yeah.
Yeah, there's one more question at the back, and then we'll come to you.
Yeah, thank you for this lovely conversation. My question is related to the manifestation of the patriarchy. It comes in various forms and shapes. Especially, you must have heard of this benevolent sexism versus hostile sexism. In the academics, we talk a lot about it. So is there a way that, how does this manifest, and how do we reduce, and how do we smash it? Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Wow. Well, how the patriarchy shows itself in society. It's of course all over. That's, I believe that a patriarchy is a society where men have more power, earn more money, and is regarded as a bit more important than women. And then you can say, okay, that's all societies. So the thing is how strong it stands. And in some parts of the world, we know that men have all power. And in other parts of the world, we have closed that gap pretty well. But things don't move as fast as some people think. People think in Norway, people think that, oh, it's 40 years since we started working with equality, so now it's all done. But people, they change slowly, and traditions are deep. And so I think we have to work with these same issues for generations to come. And it very much has to do with what I was talking about, gender roles, where many people also in Western societies believe that women are better equipped for taking care of other people. And we know it's not true. Because we see just where I come from, we have fathers, something called the father's quota. So when a newborn, when you get a kid, also the father is paid from his, he's got paid permit leave, so he can stay at home with babies. Not, of course, the first weeks, but after a few months. And we have had this for 20, 30 years, and now we see that it has done tremendously when it comes to attaching men with their kids. So things can change, but it does take time. When it comes to smashing the patriarchy, I believe it's very important to talk about it like we do now, to make people see it, because these are all invisible structures. So we have to point at it and show people which effect it has on their lives and their freedom, and also to. It's very important to do it in I believe, in a kind of a gentle way. It's to be angry. I support anger because sometimes it's very necessary. But when I talk to maybe some men who doesn't understand completely what I'm talking about, or women, because maybe they don't feel that this applies in their lives. And then I can say that, okay, it's a good thing that if you feel free in your life, but you have to lift your eyes and see that maybe the woman in the apartment next door is not as free as you. So, but not say it in an angry way, but try to help people see. That is my way of smashing the patriarchy.
Yes, one last question here.
I wanted to know, the patriarchy is all written about by women. It is heard about by women. It is spoken about by women. Apparently, I don't have the statistics, but the number of books bought by women are far more than bought by men. So, patriarchy comes from men. Do they even know about it?
It's difficult for me to hear. So
Can you just repeat the last bit, please?
The sound is very difficult to hear.
Okay. I was saying, do the men even know about it, that they are patriarchs?
Okay.
They are, you know?
So, of course, when you talk about equality or gender or feminism, it's usually women who come to listen. Not here. I'm very happy that there are so many men in the audience. But So that is why it's important to get this information in school books. I travel a lot in Norwegian schools myself, and I get paid by the government to talk to young men about gender equality, and also about problematic gender roles in pornography and like this. So that is, the schools are very important. Because you can't force men to come to your debate. So, but of course, it is a big problem that there are generally women engaging in these issues. But when if there is when women have power, then they can implement the politics anyway. So more women in power will help the issue.
Mother-in-laws can become more understanding.
Yeah.
Same things.
Yeah.
I think that's
Thanks.
about all we have time for now, because there's the next session that should start here. So I'm sorry, we'll just have to stop here.
Yes,
Huh?
but
One last question? Sure, absolutely.
Did Norway have a head start with a play like A Doll's House by Ibsen, and she slammed the door shut and walked out. So how did that help?
Are you asking if Henrik Ibsen's Dollhouse helped feminism in Norway? I believe it did. He was one of the first great feminists in Norway, and he shows that that men can absolutely be supportive. So that's a good thing. Yeah, I hope you've heard about Henrik Ibsen and the Dollhouse. It's a great play, everyone. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Marta, for this lovely conversation. I've had a really great time, and I'm sure our audience has too. Everybody have a great day, and do look up Marta's books. They're really fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anu Pande, and thank you, Marta. Wonderful session. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we will begin the next session immediately because I think we are more or less on schedule, and we'll be starting the next session. This will be a session, a conversation between Nasreen Munni Kabir and Elahe Heptullah, and this is on a book on Javed Akhtar. This will be here in this venue in the next couple of minutes. The author, as well as the Elahe, as well as Nasreen, both are here, and we will start immediately. Thank you.